some of the stuff you've been taught about how money works and where you should put money is definitely not good advice. Never get greedy. Always be realistic. That is the, fourth law of wealth. And the third law of wealth is always protect your money by investing in things you know, like, and understand. What's going on, everybody? Chris Naugle coming back with the Money School podcast, where we talk about the truth about money and how you can take back control of your money by becoming the bank. My guest today has a story. Oh, a story is an understatement. So folks, you're going to want to listen carefully to this, because some of the stuff you've been taught about how money works and where you should put money is definitely not good advice. But the way that my guest, James, found out about this is not the way I hope any of you ever have to learn the ropes of what happens next. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So we're going to get into some things today, and I know they're going to be hard to talk about, but like you said, talking about them are good things. And I love that you're wearing the purple BYO sweatshirt, in memory. And we'll talk a little bit more about the significance of the color purple. Those are the only purple hoodies in existence that we've ever created, and we did them for you.
I appreciate that.
In memory of, let's put a pin in that. So folks, Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I'm wearing the purple shirt too. Just it's just being covered up by the hoodie, and I have to say, this is the most comfortable hoodie that I own. So for a couple of reasons.
That's great. So let's just tell everybody a little bit about who James is. Who's James Miles, and what do you do, or what did Let's actually go back in time a little bit. Where did you start, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in a middle class. Middle class income family. My dad was a hard worker, saved in his 401k, gave money to charity, to church and to missionaries, and never. His advice that he taught me was never invest more than you can afford to lose.
I love that.
And that's kind of the mindset that I think that income class has. A lot of times, hold on to what you have and don't risk too much.
I think that's pretty good advice. I mean, definitely the people that got into trouble back in the Great Depression was because they were leveraged. I think we're about to see something similar to that happen. I mean, debts are out of control right now. So right. I wouldn't say that's bad advice. Maybe it's a bit short-sighted of advice, but what do you think of that?
Well, the problem with that is that it's the idea that money is a limited quantity versus, I can always go out and make more money.
Sure.
So yes, I don't want to risk my house. I don't want to risk what is necessary. I don't want to risk, being able to feed my family. But I'm willing to risk some of my future to be able to make a little bit more. I think that his mindset was, you put, the maximum you can in your 401k, so that can grow for many, many years over time. And you want to put it in safe, diversified investments so that you're not risking that at all. Whereas the people, and you want to be fully diversified. Whereas the people that have been successful, and I know your story as well, the people that have been successful don't diversify over large areas. They focus on one specific area, and you really have to be willing to lose it all. Robert Kennedy, I think he's the one that attributed this as, those who dare to fail miserably can achieve greatly. And I think that's a much better quote than, don't risk more than you can afford to lose.
I think that's well said. And I think we're going to dive deep into that, but I love on how you kind of explain that. So I know you trade some stocks. I know you do some futures. Let's just spend a second talking about, how did that come about? What got you into trading, as a profession?
So I started out as a IT guy, and worked for a company that sold mortgage education, and I did that up until 2008. And I can guess that your audience knows what happened in 2007, 2008 to the mortgage industry. So my company downsized, and I started looking around and, what did I really want to do? And investing is something that I was always a passion or a desire to learn. So I went and got my license and started working at a major brokerage firm as a broker on the phones. Learned how to trade stocks, learned how to trade options, mutual funds, ETFs, and that kind of thing, and worked there until they realized that I had an IT background and understood data. And so the business intelligence department snaked me away from the brokerage. And having someone that understands business and understands technology was just a huge win for the department. They loved having me there, teaching people how to understand the data that they were messing with and trying to report on. So that's where I really got my start. And after leaving there and working for the IU School of Medicine here in Indianapolis, I wanted to keep in touch with that trading and all of that. And so I started taking education courses on day trading, started day trading stocks, got into day trading options. Zero DTE, when that came out, was something that I dove into, and zero DTE SPX options has been my most successful, but the market is just it changes so much. And when you're trading zero DTE, you have to watch it all day, the entire day. And I couldn't do that and do my day job and other stuff that I wanted to do. So I started diving into, and the scalability is terrible there as well when you're trading spreads. So then I really started looking into futures, and you can trade E micro or micro E minis where you're risking $5 a point, and you can scale that up to whatever. I mean, there's almost no limit in the futures, and it's such a liquid market that it's not hard. You're not going to take a lot of slippage here and there. So I really just started doing that, and right now I spend maybe an hour every morning scalping the NQ futures. Try to get a couple $100 a day, and happy to move on.
That's not so bad. A couple $100 a day. Just, you said about an hour. That's all it takes to do that.
Yeah. That's where a lot of the volatility that I find in the market for the scalping that I try and do. I just try and take 10, 20 points and go on.
That's smart. Never get greedy. Always be realistic. That is the, fourth law of wealth. And the third law of wealth is always protect your money by investing in things like, and understand. And I love that, without knowing the laws of wealth, you literally hit on two of them, with, invest in things like, and understand, which you clearly do. And then protect, that would be the protect aspect. And then don't get greedy, be realistic. You got your strategy, a couple points, you're out and on with the day. And that freedom that you have with the trading has allowed you to enter the real estate world. So, we were actually chatting out at the residential assisted living facility or residential assisted living. Oh my God, I don't want to call it
national conference.
The conference, the national conference. My God, the facility. I mean, at first I'm talking about the RAL facility, then I'm talking about the conference. Yeah. So it was the conference we were at, and that's where we kind of talked a little bit about your story. But let's before we get to the story, let's talk about, how did you find residential assisted living? What piqued your interest about that? Coming from trading into real estate, it's sometimes a difficult jump. So talk about that.
Yeah. So I call myself an accidental landlord. I would buy houses, and then when I moved, I would forget to sell them and would just rent them. So, and I know there's a lot of people that get into it that way, but it's actually not a great way to get into it, because when you buy a house to live in it, a lot of times you're not considering the payout perspective, or the cash flow, right? So I had a house. My first house was in a small town, and not a great town. It was a dying town. And so when I bought it, I refinanced it. This was in the no income, no requirements era of refinancing, and had someone from Indianapolis overvalue my home. And so I took some cash out of that to pay off some debts that I had. And when I went to move, I couldn't afford to sell it because I was underwater on it. So I just started renting it, and had that for about 15 years, just trying to, it was nice because it paid the mortgage and was slowly paying that down. But ultimately, when I ended up selling it, while I walked away with a $25,000 check at the end, it wasn't profit because of, all of the money I had to put into it over the years. And the interest and all of that I had to pay on the mortgage. But I bought another house, and this one was down in Carmel, Indiana, which is, if anyone knows about that town, it's the highest per capita income in the state of Indiana, if not a larger area. And it was the smallest house in the town, little 3-in-1 on the major thoroughfare through Carmel, where all of the homes were being torn down and construction and apartments and that kind of stuff was being put in. So that was the second home that I had. That when we had, it was a 3-in-1. So when we had children, we had to move out at 4 boys, and so there wasn't enough room for them in a 3-in-1 house with me and my wife. So we moved to a larger home. And held on to that, rented it until a commercial developer came in and paid me 6 figures over what I purchased it for.
Wow.
To move out. So taking that money, that's where I was like, okay, what can I do with this? And I started looking into, single family takes a lot of doors and that's a lot of work. Thought about doing multifamily, but that was when the big boom in multifamily was kind of happening. Everybody, you go to a real estate association meeting and they get up the buy sell trade and everyone's like, I'm looking for multifamily. I'm like, yeah, you and me both, buddy. We're all looking for multifamily. So I wanted to find something else. And that's when I heard Gene Guarino talk about the residential assisted living product. And I grew up in a family that we took care of my uncle who had Down syndrome. And so I knew what it was like to live with an adult in the family that needed 24/7 care. He could do things on his own, but we couldn't leave him for any amount of time at home by himself because he had no ability for self-preservation other than, understanding direct commands. And then I also had a friend whose father had Parkinson's, and he went into one of the nicest brand new facilities in Carmel, and they created a lockdown unit for those with mental instabilities, and they couldn't handle him. They didn't know how to take care of him, and at one point they ended up kicking him out, sending him to the mental hospital. And my friend got a call saying, "You have a week to find a new place for him." And she struggled, and I was like, "There's got to be a better way. I know there's got to be a better way." And when I heard Gene Guarino talk about the residential assisted living, small community, started looking into that and seeing the reports that memory care residents thrive. It's not just going, it's not a place to go to die. It's a place where they can actually thrive and live in these smaller homes, like the homes they've lived in for the last 50, 60, 70, 80 years. Why can't we give that to them? Why do we have to cordon them off in some sort of institution or, other area where they're just going to die? So I really dug into that and took off. Was working hard on that. It was a brand new concept in the state of Indiana, in the state of Carmel, or the city of Carmel. So I had to do a lot of educating the municipalities and the builders. And so there's a lot of work that I had to do in getting that done, and got the city on board, got all my permitting taken care of, and started to build. And it's a nice little lot. It's just 2 homes in the little neighborhood on a nice street. We've got Crooked Stick Golf Course, which is, it's held LPGA tournaments, and I think it's had Masters tournaments there. Beautiful place. And the neighbor, when I was just started building, decided he didn't want me there and filed a lawsuit.
Ah, jeez.
And probably have an hour's worth of conversation on what all happened there, and he ended up getting an injunction. So I had to stop. So I have a house that's half built right now. This was I learned that I had to have the injunction at my grandmother's funeral, which is always a good time. So that was almost 3 years ago. We got the injunction. We filed an appeal that took a year and a half to get the appeal. The appellate court did not understand zoning laws. 2 of the judges didn't understand zoning. Their questions were like my attorneys came back and they're like, those judges are really confused. So we weren't surprised when we got the notification about 4 months later that they found 4 the neighbor. And so we requested a transfer to the Supreme Court, and it was such a bad ruling that it affected all 466 cities and towns in the state of Indiana. And so we got the associations that represent all those towns. There's 2 statewide associations that jumped on as amicus curiae for our lawsuit and filed briefs as well. And we got the transfer accepted to the Supreme Court, which is amazing in and of itself because they don't accept everything. They have a limited docket, so we were glad to have that. And then the day before the National Association convention, we had the hearing, and my attorneys couldn't have been more pleased at how well that hearing went. Those justices really seemed to understand zoning and kind of what was at stake at this point. And through it all, the biggest problem is that it's a violation of the Fair Housing Act for the city and the neighbors the city's not against it, but it would be a violation if the city hadn't granted me the permit. The neighbor saying the city illegally granted the permit and decided to sue me because they weren't going to be successful at suing the city. So it really is more a matter of, it's a NIMBY lawsuit. The justices recognize that. And it's also them trying to cause me to spend money, bankrupt me out of the location versus really trying to win the lawsuit at this point.
That's just insane. And, you hear that all the time, where lawsuits happen and one person's got lots of money, deep pockets or deep family ties, and they just try to just drag it out and burn the money and make it next to impossible. Even if they lose, they appeal and they just drag it out in courts. It's a shame that you're going through that. And I'm sure you'll be victorious at the end of it, but it definitely comes at a cost. Not just a cost of money, but a cost of time. All that time that this project could have been built in RAL, facilities. Now I can finally say facilities are very profitable endeavors. And you're building 2, you said, ground up?
No, I'm building 1 right now, ground up.
Okay.
I wanted to start with 1, and but yeah, I do plan on doing at least 3. That's where they really kind of start to scale really
How
well.
many beds each?
10 is what I have
nice
right now. Depending on where I end up going next with my next one, they've changed some of the zoning in Carmel, so they've limited it to 6 at this point. Indianapolis has 8, so I might do in Indianapolis, might go back into Carmel and say, hey, give me 2 more. So they really can't, if I can show that the profitability is required and a few other things, the zoning will allow for more. They just don't want someone coming in and plopping 10 beds in without having to go through any kind of review process.
Yeah, that's understandable. I'm sure it'd be no different here in New York. New York's a really tough state for that, but some people have done them. So that's awesome. Hopefully that all works out. In the meantime, just continue plugging away on the trading. So with the way you trade, one final thing, I know you work with a newsletter, a guy that prints a newsletter that you've had good success with.
Right.
What are your outlooks into the next year to 2 years? Because we are definitely seeing an economic slowdown. Every signal that could possibly go off for a recession coming is going off. But the way you're trading, are you in and out before any damage could be done? And do you stand to make more in a recessionary period than you do now?
So I've got several different things that I'm doing. Like you said, I do trade with a newsletter, and I love this term, but I hate where it came from. So he's got the heart of a teacher, meaning, and that came from Dave Ramsey, which is why I say that I'm not a big fan of his, but this guy, he's not just writing a newsletter and telling you stock picks. Like, he writes the newsletter. He explains everything about the market, where he sees the market going. He's got 30 years of experience, 40 years of experience in for all of the markets except for really crypto. And then he does weekly videos, and he has a forum where he'll answer any question that you have within, 20 minutes of you asking if he's not on vacation or away from his computer. So I've never, any of the big ones, Motley Fool or, any of those, they don't have that kind of response time. They don't have that kind of teaching. And he really wants you to understand what it is. And so the big thing, he uses Elliott waves, and he does value investing. Sure. He's a big student of Sir John Templeton, and the Oracle of Omaha. And so he's looking at the market right now and seeing that we're at the highest PE valuations that we've ever been. We're stretched away from the 200-week moving average. We haven't had much of a correction. I guess 2023 was a down year, or 2022 was a down year a little bit. We had 2020, which that was more of a black swan event than really anything else.
Right.
And we've not really flushed out much of the money that came in really during the 2020, all of the trillions of dollars that came into the market. And yeah, like you said, all of the signals are showing that we're ready to see a sell-off. And he's looking anywhere from 50 to 60. He's not the doomsdayers of saying it's going to be a 90% sell-off.
No, I'm dead on. 50 to 60% are what we're trending. That is spot on by the charts. Like no ifs, ands, or buts about we're going that far.
And we're seeing things too. Like yesterday, we hit an all-time high in the SPY. Right, gold just hit an all-time high.
That makes no sense.
That makes no sense, right? So who's buying gold? It's the smart institutions, right? It's the institutional investors, the smart investors. They're selling into the retail investors. And you listen to the talking heads on MSNBC or any of those, and they're telling you, hey, buy, 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 buy. Why are they telling you that? Because they're trying to sell. They need somebody to sell to so they can get out of the market. So they're selling to the retail investors. And that's why we have the cycles that we do. And you were at the top of a wave 5 when it comes to Elliott waves, meaning that's where the euphoria and the excitement. And as they say, you want to be fearful when the masses are greedy, and greedy when the masses are fearful. So I'm a little fearful. The way I'm taking advantage is getting into, he has us in, miners and value defensive stocks, that kind of stuff, things that have been beaten down, stocks that have been down 80, 90%, but are good quality companies that are making money.
Fundamentally, which is something nobody ever talks about anymore.
Right. So I remember, back in the 80s and 90s, people would buy when the dividend was 3, or when there was 6, and they'd sell when the dividend was 3. Because the dividend was constant, but the price of the stock would be going up and down and causing that dividend. So now we're using PEs, not necessarily dividends, because not everybody's paying dividends. But that's kind of how the market was viewed in the past, and that's how we're kind of viewing it now. It's PE ratios are just crazy high.
Well, I'm so happy to hear you talk like this, because I didn't look into the newsletter, but a lot of these newsletters are just leading, the blinds, off the cliff. That's literally what they're doing. And I'm really happy that, you actually have somebody and yourself, the belief that fundamentals actually do matter when you're investing money, because all these people investing in indexing, they just don't even understand what they're doing. They don't understand the risk and how out of whack the indexes are. I mean, when you just look at the Magnificent Seven and what that makes up of the S&P 500, there is no point in even talking about the 500 stocks in the S&P 500. None of them matter except for the Magnificent Seven. And they fundamentally, they make absolutely zero sense. None of those stocks do. Hence why, Warren Buffett, the Oracle, was sold off so many stocks. Like household name stocks that people would think, oh, those companies are untouchable. Well, he's selling them. And
he just dumped a ton of Apple.
Tons of Apple, which think of it. If there's one company I was to sit there and look at that's super stable, I mean, more cash than all of the European nations. And he sees something he didn't like, because he doesn't sell stock, period. He doesn't sell stock, but he dumped, didn't just sell, he dumped that in Bank of America. See ya. And I'm sure there's more that we're not hearing about, because they just didn't hit the radar, but really happy.
Well, they're all building cash positions, right? And the only way you can invest in a down market is when you have cash.
That's it. The only way. And the other thing that's really interesting that you were talking about in that is just, the different Elliott waves. And I did a whole training on that where I showed those different human emotions and how they play in and where we're at. I think I was probably a little ahead of where we were at, but, I just tried to really kind of be way out in front of this thing, because this is going to be a doozy.
I don't know that you were ahead. I just don't think you realized how irrational it was going to be. Because, we've been at the top of the market as far as the fundamentals are concerned for the last 2 or 3 years.
3 years.
And there's just too much money, and nobody's gotten spanked in a long time, so they don't realize what's coming.
Especially the younger generation, or I call them the 401k,
The buy the dippers.
Yeah, the buy the dippers. Like they have no idea and won't even accept that this is humanly possible, what's about to happen, because they just have never seen it. They're like, well, it's never happened, so it's not going to happen. The Fed's going to step in. The Fed's going to save us. The Fed ain't saving anything this time. I promise you. The only reason the markets are high is it's an election year. And if you look at the last 5 elections, it's the same freaking thing. And then after, we won't give the movie away. Your real estate business lives and dies by the network and the connections that you make. I mean, after all, your network, well, it's your net worth. That's what you always heard, right? If that's an area where you desire improvement, well, Private Money Club, it's for you. PMC saves you precious time and money by bringing the real estate world, well, right to you, right in the palm of your hand. So get in on the action, like so many others have, by going to privatemoneyclub.com and sign up. I want to segue a little bit from that. One other thing that I love is you apply and you love the infinite banking concepts, the be your own banker. So let's just talk a little bit, like in all of your travels and everything you've done, how did you find the infinite banking concept?
It popped up, since I've been doing the real estate thing, it pops up at all the real estate kind of association meetings and things that you go to. And it's probably the same as any kind of proselytization that happens. It takes 5 or 7 times of you hearing it before you actually start to do something with it. Again, I grew up with the old adage of, buy term and invest the rest, right? Which is a terrible idea.
Can I just make a note on that? Buy term, invest the difference. Like that is the thing that everybody knows. And we, for the first time, nobody's ever done what we just did. We mathematically proved on every scenario we can fight anybody on this, that strategy doesn't work. And it does not beat what we're talking about with the infinite banking concept if you were to do apple for apple things. And anyway, that white paper is available. As a matter of fact, I can even put it in the bio on this episode if any of you wanted to see that. It's a heavy read, about 58 pages, but you know what? We didn't want anybody coming in saying, oh, no, you're wrong. You didn't consider this. Oh, we considered everything. So didn't mean to take you off what you were talking about.
No, that's okay. I'd heard about the white paper, and I definitely want to give it a read because that's just how nerdy I am. But for me, I did invest. I bought term for my wife because I have insurance through work, which is kind of where I focused on my life insurance for most of my career. We bought term for my wife 20 years ago. Exactly. It just expired this month. And, we spent, I think it was $18 a month for 20 years times 12 months. I haven't done the math recently on how much that was, but we spent all that money and have zero to show for it. Now, had she passed and we had that, that $100,000 would have been nice, but I could have gotten that $100,000 in a whole life policy as well, if not more, and had something to show for that 20 years of payments. But the flip side to that is de-invest the rest. Like, I don't know if I would imagine your study, I haven't read it, but hopefully it goes into what are the percentage of people that actually will take, okay, life insurance would cost you $250 a month. You can get term for $15 a month, put the $15 a month in and then go invest the rest. Who's investing that $225 or $235? Are they investing it or are they not?
Less than 5%. It's less than 5%.
Right. So while it sounds like a good idea. I mean, I knew when they were suggesting you could get 12% a year on that investment, that was a bad mathematical model to begin with. But so hearing about the infinite banking thing and seeing that I can start to build up my own cash reserves, pay for things but still earn interest on it. That was I hated buying stuff because I'm like, when I pay for this now, I bought it like cars, right? Or vacations. It's a depreciating asset. And so I'm no longer earning, I'm losing money on what I just spent. If I spent $25,000 on a car, or I spend $5,000 on a vacation, right? I've got the memories of the vacation, but that money's gone. And there's no additional continued interest build on that. So when I heard that, I could invest the money, I could use that or I put the money in a life insurance policy, and it would continue to earn. Yeah, it's not breaking the bank on. Well, it literally is breaking the bank, but it's not, making more money than you possibly could make on a really good year in the stock market. But it's a good, steady foundational income that then I can just continue to recycle that money and use over and over again. And so now it's like when my wife wants to go on a $3,000 vacation, I'm like, okay, let's do it, because I'm going on the vacation. I'm earning money on the money that I spent on the vacation, and I can just repay that, and then we'll have that money again for another vacation. So I don't remember exactly what flipped the trigger. It might have been a podcast, but somehow I got connected with the Bank on Yourself and followed up with that. And I have a policy on myself, got a policy on my wife, policy on all four of my boys, and for college we set up another policy for my 18-year-old to be able to pay through that, and really set those up as savings vehicles. I'd learned a lot about, hey, use your Roth IRA to save, because if you put that in for a child, then as long as they have active income, you can put that in there and then save it in there, and it's got growth, but you can always take out whatever you've put in because it's post-tax, right? So if you put in $5,000 and they need $5,000 for college or for a house or for a car or whatever, you can always pull that out. The growth needs to stay in there, but you can pull whatever so it was like a kind of a savings account, as I heard, a savings account on steroids. But what I've learned is anytime the government sets something up for your benefit,
it's not for your benefit.
It's not. Yeah. As Reagan said, the 5 worst words from the government is, we're here from the government. We're here to help. The 401k, the guy that set that up, he hates it now.
He hates it. Yeah. Yeah. It looks great. 501k.
Yeah. Roth IRAs, that kind of thing. So I can tell you my experience with my Roth IRA, but with the Roth IRA, but I'll kind of back up a little bit and tell you my story, if that's okay.
Yeah, because we don't want to get into the Roth and the problems because we don't have context. So,
right.
You got into the infinite banking concept, great savings program, did it for all your kids, and our kids, when they get older, they want to buy a car. So let's explain how you used it for a car.
Yeah. So my oldest, he went through high school and decided that he was done with school. He didn't want to do school, but he absolutely loved cars. And we had set him up with a policy, and he started working. I'm like, hey, we're not going to put your money into just savings. We're going to put it into a life insurance policy. You can save up, and then when you're ready to buy a car, you can buy a car and then pay that back. And then, when you're ready to buy a house, you'll buy a duplex or a triplex or a quad, and that'll be your first property, so that someone else is paying your mortgage for you. But you'll use the Bank on Yourself policy to pay for that, so that you're not having to go to the bank to get that mortgage, or at least the down payment would come from the Bank on Yourself, and so you're not losing that, and you're having someone else pay for your rent. And I told them, then you need to have a company come in and manage that for you. So you have a rental property management company. So that way, when your neighbor comes over and complains about, the landlord, you can be like, yeah, man, he raised my rent too. So, cause he's going to have to pay himself rent, cause it's going to be, but anyway, so that was the plan. And so he got that set up. He was agreed to that, which is fantastic, because how many 18, 19, 20-year-olds actually listen to what their parents have to say?
I've been told not many, which I'm glad to hear at least yours did.
Yeah, for some reason mine managed to think that my ideas were good, or at least they were willing to try them out. And so we started that, and he bought he did a lot of research, and found a 1998 Boxster Porsche, cherry red, manual, a convertible, and it was in St. Louis. So we had to drive out there to get it. And I'm sure you've heard that the best security system for millennials these days are a manual transmission, right? So he had no idea how to drive manual.
So he just bought a Porsche and it's a manual and he doesn't know how to drive it yet.
Yeah. Well, and he did that on purpose because he worked at a mechanic shop. They were training him how to become a master mechanic. He got up to C-Tech and was working on his B-Tech stuff. And he needed to know how to drive manual so that he could pull cars in and out of the shop. Because at that point, only the 55-year-old master tech could pull in cars that were manual. And this was in Carmel, so they would get sports cars coming in that were manual. So people, he needed to know how to drive those. And so we drove out and I gave him the training in the middle of St. Louis, and we were practicing. And he just looked at me. He's like, "Dad, can you drive this home?" I'll take the manual Prius and you just drive. So I got to drive his little sports car for 4 hours back from St. Louis. Which was a lot of fun. But yeah, so we used the policy to pay for that, and it set it up so that he would just start paying that policy back and build that money up. Unfortunately, and this is the part that's tragic, on December 31st, so New Year's Eve, he was going to a New Year's Eve party with his girlfriend. And it was just a little sleety, and he spun on a bridge and managed to be sideswiped or T-boned by an SUV. And those 2-seater Porsche cars they're really tiny,
Especially the Boxster.
Yeah, the Boxster. Yeah, and he unfortunately they had to cut him out. Had cut him and his girlfriend out of the car. The paramedics were there within 5 minutes or so, but he had just lost so much blood that his heart stopped and they couldn't get it started again. Fortunately, his girlfriend survived. It was a pretty bad concussion. He did have airbags go off in the car, so that was good. She had a really bad concussion. Doesn't remember a whole lot of what happened, which is probably a good thing. Yeah, we found out. I was out in Pennsylvania with my family. My wife just happened to be home because she was feeling sick and didn't want to drive out with me. And we got the call to go down. So, the worst call.
The call that no parent ever wants to get.
So yeah, that's the ups and downs, I guess, of a small, sports car. The benefit, not the benefit, but the thing that I know is that where he spun, icy road, and how he was hit, it didn't matter if he was in a sports car or if he was in my Prius or another vehicle. He was on ice and it was a little bit of a hill, and so he was going to spin anyway. One of his buddies kind of texted him after it happened. He knew that he had passed, but he texted, I wish I never would have recommended that effing car to you. And I was able to respond back and give him comfort to say, look, man, it wasn't the car. It was the circumstances. And we have faith. We believe in God. We believe in Jesus. And we know where Will is. We know that he's with Jesus. He's with our Lord. And we'll see him again. We also know that this world sucks. Tragedy happens. It doesn't matter. It's random. There's not always a way to make sense out of everything. You're not going to be able to say this happened for a reason. And I don't believe that it happened for a reason, but what I do believe is a lot of good can come out of it. I do all things through him there's a verse, and I'm not thinking of it properly right now, but just the idea of all things happen, or yeah, I can't remember the verse off the top of my head, but basically the idea of no matter what bad happens, good things can come of it. And that's what we're seeing. It's we don't ever say that Will died for a reason, but we do see a lot of really good things happening because of it. And those are the results that we love to see. Would much rather have Will with us, but to see just the way that it's affected and helped other people has been phenomenal. So yeah, that's
It's a tough one, man.
yeah.
Through Christ, all things are possible, I think maybe is what's one of the scriptures.
Yeah. So that and what's interesting, I go back to the RAL. Gene Greeno, he was our mentor. He's the one that started the RAL Academy. He unfortunately passed to COVID. And I was talking to his wife, Mona, at the RAL Academy. And she said something that was very interesting that I've kind of thought of before, but didn't really put it into those words. But she's like, now that we've experienced this, we don't fear death as much. And that's really true. When you have faith and you have hope, you don't fear that death because, one, we know that we're going to see our loved ones again. But two, we know where they're at. We know where we're going. And so the fear of death is so much less. I have no desire to die. I don't want to leave the rest of my family with, but I also know that with the life insurance, I'm leaving them with, financial security as well if I do die. And that's kind of where, the next step of this story goes. It was really hard for me to see the number on his life insurance policy and to go through all of that. I had supplemental life insurance and accidental death and dismemberment insurance for my children through my policy. So we have life insurance there. He had life insurance through his work. And then we had this bank on yourself policy. And through all of that, we ended up with almost $500,000 in life insurance money that were coming our way, which I always say this, everybody knows it, everybody agrees. I would give all of that back to have Will.
Yeah.
But when I was sitting down with the funeral director and I was sitting down with this, at the cemetery and having to make financial decisions, when I was talking to the tow company and talking to the, other insurance companies about what financial decisions I had to make, it was so much easier knowing that I didn't have to worry about the finances.
Yeah. I say that all the time, like I've been doing this 21 years now and I've delivered, I'm not going to say I can't count, but more than I can remember. I've delivered more death claims than I remember. And just the other day, we got another notice that one of our clients passed. And, my money mentor that was handling the case, I said, this will be one of the most powerful things you ever go through, delivering this to the family that just lost a loved one. And one of the reasons is not just because it's money and, they could use money. It's because you're going to be the only one bringing a check, because everybody else is going to be sending an invoice and asking for money. And you will be the only one. And you will see the impact of this. And it always bothers me when people with term or this, I'll be self-insured, or, I don't need life insurance. That is such a selfish thing to say. But I can't fault people for that, because they know not what they say. They've never experienced it. And I have, and I've delivered death claims to widows that just unexpectedly lost the husband, and when they open the door, you could, right away. I mean, I physically deliver these things, mm-hmm. and open the door, and their little kids and the wife, they're still just in a mess. And she didn't even know that there was life insurance. She had no idea. The husband had taken it out. He was a client of mine. I don't know why he didn't tell her. Maybe he just forgot. But she was going to lose the house.
Mm.
And when I took the check out of the envelope, I can't remember how much it was, 300,000, and I gave it to her. I mean, she just burst into tears, and then the kids started crying, and that was just one of the most moving things. And, I've had several of those situations, and people just don't realize that. And the speed of which a life insurance policy pays the death benefit out is also,
Oh, yeah.
you might even want to talk about that. I mean, from the second that life insurance company gets that death certificate in the claim form, their job as an insurance company is to process that claim as fast as humanly possible. Unlike your car insurance, unlike your homeowner's insurance, where I just talked to somebody that got hit with that the hurricane that was 2 years ago. They just got their check and they had to fight it with legal and lawyers. I've never heard that with a life insurance company. Matter of fact, just recently, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent.
No,
just
go ahead.
recently, there was a guy, a really good client of ours, who came to our events. He passed unexpectedly, and he had just taken his policy out. I think it was within 6 months old. So the insurance company performed a full review, because they cannot pay that claim that early on if there's anything that was missed on the application. And they did the full review, and sure enough, they paid. And I've never heard of the insurance company not paying, even if it was questionable.
Yeah. That the insurance was the fastest thing to get paid out for sure. I didn't get hand delivered a check. I was mailed, but that's fine. I do want to say one thing. I mentioned that, it was almost $500,000 of insurance, and I did not go into any of this intentionally insuring my son's life for that much money. It just happened to be a combination of, my work, his work, and then the fact that we did this bank on yourself policy. And this banking policy was really set up for a savings account. It wasn't set up for the insurance. Obviously, it has to be set up for the insurance and the death benefit, but we didn't look at, hey, we need this much death benefit. We set it up to, where can we maximize the effectiveness of this policy? And it just happened to be that. And so we've done that with our other children. And I'll say this too. I started my policy when I was 45. We started his policy when he was 18. His policy had a much larger death benefit for the amount of money that he was paying than mine does. So, start early is really what it comes down to, because the premiums will be smaller for a larger death benefit, but and you have more time. Compounding is an important piece of investing, and if you can start early with your life insurance policies, that interest and dividends going to compound for a much longer period of time. So you did touch on the payouts and how quickly they are. Some of the other things that I've learned in the real estate market, I guess, when you go to the real estate conventions and association meetings, there's always somebody trying to sell something. That's what they're there for. And I heard a lot about setting up Roth IRAs for your kids. It's a great savings vehicle because you can put the money in. It's post-tax. Put the money in when they make less than, I don't know, $17,000 a year, or whatever the number is this year. That's they're not taxed on that money anyway. So it ends up being a tax-free contribution to the Roth IRA. That Roth IRA grows tax-free. When they retire, they'll be able to take that money out tax-free and penalty-free. But before that, any contribution that's been made to that Roth IRA, because it's a Roth and it's post-tax money, they can withdraw that money for whatever reason that they want. It doesn't have to be for a house or education or anything like with a traditional IRA. So, it was sold as a kind of a savings account on steroids. And what I've learned is that whenever the government sets something up for your benefit, it really is not for your benefit. The 401k, the IRA, all of those ways of saving money, that's very, very recent. It was the 70s or the 80s when the 401k came out, and the IRAs were the 80s and the 90s. these are very, very recent phenomenons. And so people have been able to save and pay for their retirements um, in better ways without the government's help in the past. And when it came to the Roth IRA, it took the longest, and it wasn't even that much money, but it took the longest to get that moved from his accounts into our accounts. And even though they're in our accounts, they're still restricted because they're inherited Roth IRAs. And there's 5-year rules and 10-year rules and a bunch of different rules that you have to understand and know before you can pull that money out. And if you do without understanding those rules, you could end up with a tax or a penalty up to 20% of the value of the account or the value that you've taken out. And so you really need to, you end up having to work with your broker, whoever it is, the bank, whoever you set up that account with, to make sure that they're giving you the right advice, and then talking to your tax attorney or your CPA to make sure that you understand all of the tax ramifications to this money. And it was such a small amount of money that it was so frustrating that when I reached out to the brokerage firm and told them I needed this money, they're like, well, you have to get a letter of testamentary and from the court of probate to be able to have this money come out. I was like, but this is like, he was my dependent. This was a custodial Roth IRA. I'm the custodial, it's his. And they said, well, and I didn't know this at the time, but I was working with them, and I have another son that has a Roth IRA. And so I got off the phone with them telling me that I needed this letter of testamentary. And I was like, hey, I need to set up beneficiaries, because they told me I didn't have a beneficiary on the account. Like, I need to set up beneficiaries for my other son's account, so this doesn't ever happen again. They're like, oh, it's a custodial account. He is the beneficiary. You can't have a beneficiary on the account. I'm like, well, what happens when the beneficiary dies? They're like, well, you have to get a letter of testament. It goes through probate and all this kind of stuff.
And if nobody understands probate, look it up. It is not fun, and it is basically just another way for the government to get in your pants.
Yeah. Fortunately, in the state of Indiana, they have a thing called small estate affidavit. In Indiana, if you have an estate that's less than $100,000, you can sign an affidavit and get it notarized, and you don't have to go through probate. Just any creditor, anybody. The brokerage firm, they didn't understand this. They didn't know this. They started telling me that the IRS needs to know all of this stuff. I'm like, probate is state. Like, the IRS doesn't care about probate. They care about getting their taxes. I get that. We're not trying to take the money out of the IRA. We just want to move it from the Roth to the inherited Roth. Like, there's no taxable event there. And I've worked for brokerage firms, so I know some of this. I've never worked in the estate department, but I thought the estate department should understand this kind of stuff.
One would think.
Yeah, she said, you need to send us this information. So what I did was I took my affidavit, and where it said, where I filled out the form and it said, identify the letter of testamentary, I identified my affidavit, and then I copied and pasted the state law directly out of the state law, put that in a PDF, and I shipped both of those to them saying, open up my IRAs, please. And it took them about a week, and they got back to me, and finally they sent me basically a form. I forget what the name of the form was, but it was basically a hold harmless form. It was basically, okay, we'll do what you want, but you agree not to sue us if anything happens.
Unreal.
And I was like, okay, I know this is right because, it says it in the state law. And I'm sure their attorneys looked at it and went, yes, he's right, but we don't have processes or policies around this, so we want to CYA. So, but it took, I got, I don't know, it was within 4 to 6 weeks I got the insurance payout. The accidental death and dismemberment had to take a little bit longer because they had to be sure that he wasn't inebriated or had any alcohol or drugs in his system, which he didn't. Fortunately, it was not a drunk driving accident or anything like that. My heart goes out to the people that have legal stuff on top of losing a child as well. Fortunately, we didn't have any of that. And this has all just been by the grace of God that we had everything in place, even his car insurance. you know, a lot of times kids are like, I'm going to get the bare ass minimum because I don't want to pay. You know, I was like, hey, stay on my insurance, because even with your sports car, because it's garaged at my house and you live here, it ended up being like $50 a month extra for him to have a little red sports car. And that covered, you know, I don't think we had max coverage, but his girlfriend's dad said, hey, I called the insurance company and they said they would cover everything, because she had a hospital stay and she had medical as well. And then we never heard from the other vehicle in the accident. And, you know, I was told by my agent, yeah, they'll be covered fine. So don't, like, there are places to be stingy in life, you know, buy cheap groceries, or, you know, do that, but don't get stingy on your insurance.
I couldn't agree more. And I think your story is just a proof that that's exactly what folks need to do. And, you know, there's never going to come a time where somebody, you know, when they die, that their beneficiaries, so to say, their family members aren't going to be okay getting a check. So when someone tells me, oh, I don't need insurance, I don't want that crap, that life insurance, always trying to sell us life insurance. It's like, when you die unexpectedly, your family is going to ask the question of why you don't have it, why you didn't plan to make sure that things were going to be okay. I mean, there's so many things I can go into there, but I'll just, you know, leave it at, you know, what your story stands for is one that so many people need to hear. And I'm so sorry for your loss. I love that you talk about it, because I think that is where you find strength, you know, in talking about it. And other people need to hear stories like this. Is, you know, as tragic as it is, they need to understand, like, we're all, you know, we don't make the rules, you know, when it's our time, you know, and we have nothing we can do to control that. So we might as well prepare while we're here. And just little things like, you know, the insurance on the car. I mean, that's a big deal. And a lot of people are learning that in, you know, different parts of the country where they've been hit with natural disasters, and they probably did have the bare minimum because they didn't want to pay for it. And well, that's probably not going to be a good discussion. We're going to hear a lot more about it, but you know, I think, you know, I wish you the best of luck on that project. I know you're going to come out and get that place built and everything else, but I mean, is there anything else you'd like to share with this audience?
Well, I mean, you mentioned the project again. I don't know if you recognized what I was wearing when I was at the RAL, but I had a GoFundMe code. So if anybody wants to help me out with this lawsuit, you know, it's kind of me. I built this because my grandmother had Alzheimer's. My friend was going through it with her dad. I'm not a big corporation that's putting these RALs up in every country or every city in every state. You know, I'm just trying to do this to, you know, be a small business. So I do have a GoFundMe. If you're willing to put that link in the bio, I'd be, you know, I'd love that as well, to get help. You know, us small people have to stick together to help, you know, fight these people that think that they can just throw their money around and get whatever they want. Versus,
yeah. So what I'll do one better, folks. We'll put the GoFundMe link in the description of this podcast episode, which will go out on every place you can hear a podcast. And I'll go one further. For any of you that donate to the GoFundMe, if you send an email with the dollar amount you put into the GoFundMe, I'll match. So the email that you would send that to is shauna@chrisnaugle.com. And all we need to know is you contributed to the GoFundMe. And then what I'll do is I'll have our bookkeeper match your contribution to the GoFundMe. So your dollars will do double the duty and double the work. So I'll put that out there. So anybody that's listening to this, that's my offer to you. The other thing too that we didn't talk about is James, like, you're wearing a purple sweatshirt, you know, and that's kind of outside the norm. What's the significance of the color purple?
Yeah, so purple was my son's favorite color. He really loved purple. And so I've never been a purple person, but for whatever reason he loved it. And so when I was I answered a question about math in the presentation that Chris gave at the national convention, and he said he had a gift for me, and he asked me what color I wanted, and I said, you know what, let's go purple, because this Be Your Own Bank product is very much represented by, you know, what my son did to buy his car. I know, Chris, you love Porsches as well, so I'm sure that has a close place in your heart as well. And so, yeah, so that's why I've got this. The other thing I want to say is, we didn't need the money from his life insurance policy, but what I will say is it allowed us to do things as a family, to come together and be able to celebrate him and be able to focus on us. Um, his life insurance policy allowed us to go on a family cruise over spring break. We've done a lot of travel this year. He went on a Spain missions trip last year. My other son was going on that trip this year, and the church was short funds for that. I was able to fulfill the obligation that they had through the life insurance. And then the other thing is, when he was still alive, he told me, "Hey, Dad, your next car needs to be an Ioniq, a Hyundai Ioniq, because I don't know, I had a Prius. I'm not necessarily green, but I like the idea of not having to go to the gas pump and pay, $3, $4, $5 a gallon." And so I thought about that, and he's like, "Yeah, get the Ioniq." He knew a lot about cars. He had researched it a lot, and he said it was, one of the number one or the number one electronic vehicle. So with life insurance money, I was able to purchase a 2023. And then I found out later that it has a lot of design elements from the Porsche. So that was really the reason he was recommending
They
that I
look
get
really
it.
cool. They really do.
Yeah,
I'm
so
not an
it's
electric
been
car guy at all.
yeah.
But I do, when I drive by one of those, I'm like, man, that's a sharp looking car.
Yeah, it's a good looking car, and it'll beat anybody off the line with that.
I'll put that to the test. I got a car right there that I think might take yours off the line.
I mean, bring it on. I'd like to see.
It's funny because we did a video, and we got to finish this. You just reminded me. We did a video with a Tesla Cybertruck, and the thing was, can my Porsche Turbo S beat the Cybertruck? So we did this whole thing about it, showed them how they can, have somebody else pay for the Cybertruck, but we have not yet raced with the Porsche and the Cybertruck, but I will kick its butt. There's no question.
There is a video that I saw of a Cybertruck and a Porsche. I don't remember what the Porsche was. It was on a 1/4-mile dirt track.
Dirt.
Interesting. Yeah, I believe it was dirt track, 1/4-mile, one lap. Cybertruck led until the last corner.
Wow. Can't believe it. Well, I hope I don't have to swallow my words, but I'm telling you, Turbo S, if I launch it, there's no way that Cybertruck is ever going to catch it. And I would say the same for except for the Plaid, any electric car, I'd put this car up against.
Yeah. So I won't argue with that. What I said was, I'll beat you off the line.
Off the line. I'll still
I don't know how far I'll get before you catch up, but I'll beat you off.
Hey, I'm up for any challenge. I love it. But let's go back, folks, real quick, just as we wrap this episode. The challenge was the GoFundMe. So we're going to put that in the description. And my pledge was I will match every one of your contributions to the GoFundMe because it's a good cause. And you're right. We all need to stand together for that. So with that being said, James, it's been a real honor. Thank you for sharing your story and any parting words.
Do good and do well. It's what Gene Greeno had always said. And I can't thank him enough for being the mentor that he was. It's led me to this point where I am today with RAL. I know that your mentor has spent a lot of times at the RAL, so I heard a lot of his presentation. It was great to hear your presentation. So look into it. It may seem like it's going to take a little while to get off the ground, but nothing is instant. There's no get rich anywhere. I've day traded for 3 years or 4 years, and I've still not gotten rich off of day trading. I've learned a lot, and I do make money, but most of the money I'm trading with is from my bank on your self accounts anyway. So I'm still making money while I'm trading.
I love it. Making money on the same dollar twice. What a way to end it. Thanks for joining. Folks, it's been an honor here to bring this guest on and let you hear this story. I hope it meant something to you the same way it means something to me. With that being said, thanks for joining us for this episode of the Money School Podcast. Until the next time, be well.